Welcome to Gutsy Talks. I'm Rachel Larson, your host, naturopath and nutritionist, and I'm here to have real, honest conversations that can help you heal your gut, calm your mind, and fall back in love with food. Together with leading health experts, we'll dive into all things gut health and explore the deep connections between your gut and overall well-being, so you can feel empowered to take control of your health and live your best life. If you love all things gut health, follow me for more on Instagram at rachel.larson or head to rachellarson.com.au. Now, let's get into today's episode. Today, we're joined by Georgie Collinson, a leading expert in high-functioning anxiety, renowned for her holistic mind-body-soul approach. As an anxiety mindset coach, clinical hypnotherapist, and Bachelor-qualified naturopath nutritionist, she combines personal experience with professional expertise to help women take control of their anxious minds. Through her online programs and Anxiety Reset podcast, Georgie has earned a reputation as Australia's #1 anxiety therapist, guiding thousands of high-achieving Type A perfectionists to overcome self-doubt and building lasting confidence. She's also the author of the best-selling book, The Anxiety Reset Method, a proven roadmap to breaking free from stress, exhaustion, and people-pleasing. And here she is, Georgie. It's so lovely to have you. Welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you for that beautiful intro, and I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, I'm happy for you to be here as well. I think when I was doing this podcast, I always knew I wanted to have lots of conversations about the nervous system because with my gut health community, like they are they are just one of the same thing. And I know that so many people with gut health issues have anxiety, and I really wanted to unpack that. So I couldn't think of anyone better. And before we obviously jump into all of the hows and the whys and what's going on, I want to hear about you and how did you get into this anxiety niche?
Well, it was kind of by force and life initiation in many ways. And like many people's story of origin, it was something that I was struggling with myself and just felt so consumed by daily anxiety, especially, from when I was in high school, it kind of worked in my favor a bit, being this perfectionist and high achiever, and it helped me excel in my studies. But not that that was really as fun as I would like life to be, but it,
Mm,
it, it didn't seem like a problem until I went through my parents' divorce and my dad left my mum, and it was just so at the time unexpected. But obviously,
mm,
in hindsight, it's like, hang on, yes, that wasn't that was actually something you could see coming,
yeah.
but I couldn't see it before it happened, and it was devastating. It was like my whole world, this safe center that I had, was just crumbling, and so I from there my anxiety just spun into a whole new level of out of control and really got into the perfectionist
Mm,
tendencies to try to feel safe. It was like if I could just eat the perfect food, maybe I will make all the right chemicals in my brain to feel really good. And if I take all the right supplements and have all the right friends and wear the perfect clothes, like it was so controlled and that wasn't making me very happy. It did lead me to study naturopathy and nutrition, which was like a kind of bonus along the way
yeah.
of my, fumbling through life at that time. But I think it's really important to say, like the beginning of that for me was just finding my own answers out of desperation. And every time we had topics on nervous system,
Mm,
anxiety, stress, and our adaptogen herbs and talking about magnesium and all the benefits and things like that, my eyes would just light up and my ears
yes.
would prick. And I just absorbed that information. And then when it came to graduating, working with people in the real world in clinic, I just loved every time someone walked into my door working with anxiety. But I eventually reached a point where I realized, okay, I could give someone the perfect treatment plan. I can give them all the things to do. And still, there's just like some people are just not wanting to. What is that thing that makes them
Mm,
not take their supplements, not do
mm,
the loving thing for themselves, or, still stay stuck in some kind of, thought loop? And that's where I did further study and wanted to work with the subconscious mind, the
yeah.
hypnotherapy, and be able to resolve a lot of that stuff. So that's pretty much been my journey. And it's just been a huge passion to find a deeper, more lasting and results driven solution for people who are struggling with this stuff. And yeah, and through my own searching and finding things that worked for me.
Look, is there a better way to learn than like trying to heal yourself? Like, really, I think you're your own guinea pig in so many ways. And I feel like that makes people, you and I, like working in our fields, when we go through things, we can relate to our clients more, you know? And I think people who are looking for help probably want to feel understood. And I think like even though it feels like we've gone through the ringer in our respective ways, but we're out the other side, and that's also a great picture of hope. So like thank you for sharing that. And I think that for anyone who doesn't know, like, I think Georgie is a great example for people that can like come through the other side, because I absolutely know that feeling as well. It can be encompassing. It can feel like that is the only thing that you'll ever be is anxious, in all its different ways. And
Yeah.
so I guess like I know that you've kind of explained different things that were happening in your life that may have, I guess, triggered or exacerbated anxiety, but like, why do we get anxiety? Like, is there a purpose to anxiety?
Hmm. Oh, I love that question. Yes, yes, there's a purpose to anxiety. Would you believe there's a purpose to
Mhm.
every emotion that we have? We're so good at wanting to just have the happy, positive feelings, and we think that anything other than that has to
Mhm.
be bad. And that's purely our conditioning. Like if we were raised with a different perspective on emotions, we wouldn't feel that way. But that's a big ingrained one at the moment. Anxiety has a purpose in guiding us back to our true self when we have gone out of balance in some way. And this can be on many different levels. It could be on the physical level. So that, naturopath nutrition side of things can come into there, where if we're sleep deprived
Yeah.
or we do have some kind of infection in our gut or something going on, yes, that can play a role in our whole system and lead us to feeling out of balance and contribute to anxiety. Is at the end of the story, though,
Mm.
most of the time, no. Most of the time, there's other things going on, such as our emotional world that we need to explore and address. And so, anxiety will be calling us, guiding us. Please see this pain. Please see this part of me that's hurting, that's sensitive, that's scared, that's sad, that's angry.
Mm.
And it's really challenging to actually turn around and face those feelings when we've never done that before in our lives, when we're so used to trying to escape out of that or not feel that way. And this is where we start to really see progress, though, when we turn into ourselves
Mm.
and into our inner world. So anxiety will guide us to that as well. And it will often leave us with a sense of, why didn't I do this sooner? I wish I'd begun this earlier, because of just how much it catapults our self-growth and that sense of feeling safe with yourself, feeling
Mm.
loving and kind towards yourself. We spend so much of our lives thinking that this sense of self-hatred and criticism and pressure is like the only way we can be,
Yeah.
when we can really do so much around that. And then the last piece that anxiety calls us to is that self-trust.
Yep.
And actually, because it makes us so uncomfortable, we have to find a way to answer that question: how do I trust life? And
Mm.
that calls us to really connect back with our body and our intuition. And our intuition is right there. We all have access to it. And that answers a lot for us in those unanswerable questions about, like, what is the point and why am I going through this pain? And none of
Yeah.
it makes sense. And that's something I like to help people learn and access as well.
I love that because you've said it perfectly. Anxiety is seen as a bad thing. And of course, too much. And, to certain degrees, it isn't helpful. But like its true purpose really is to be helpful. And I know that a lot of my patients, specifically in dealing with bloating and food, they can get quite anxious around food. I also think that, like, and you probably I've already said this, but yeah, like that anxiety is serving as a way that it's trying to protect them, even though like it is about, I guess, trying to overcome that trust, all of those things, exactly what you were talking about. So I think for anyone listening that is feeling anxious around food, just know that there is a purpose to that. And it's not that it's a bad thing. It is trying to guide you, I guess, in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
like literally, this is something that we often don't consider, that everything that our body is doing is for us. It's
Mm,
all geared for our survival, for our benefit. Even like crazy gut issues,
yeah.
it's for us. It's trying to help us in some way, whether that's a reconnection, an awareness about our food, an awareness about what we're eating.
Yeah.
Even just like normalizing to ourselves that it's okay to feel this way, given what you've been through, given that, you've had stabbing pains and incredible like discomfort, or an emergency accident in public, and things that are just like so embarrassing and make you not trust your body.
Yeah.
But when we look at it from that perspective, it's like, actually, it's understandable why you would feel this distrust.
Yes.
That's that first step back towards building more trust with yourself.
Yeah. I love that. I feel like we are getting more anxious as a society. Is it the fact that we are? Is it the fact that we're talking about it more? Like, like how many people are feeling anxious? Is there statistics like, where are we at with anxiety as a global population?
Mm. Again, another beautiful question, Rachel. And I would say that even though we can't go back like 200 years and kind of
Hmm.
ask people, how anxious do you feel?
Yes.
No doubt there were reasons to feel anxious even then.
Mm.
But let's look at the differences in our society now. We really do live in what I call an anxiogenic environment. That's not a word I made up. It means anxiety inducing. And so look at the information overload, the
Mm.
speed at which expectations are around getting things done. And, perhaps 200, 300 plus years ago, if you didn't get the task done, didn't get the letter written,
Yeah.
that's okay. We're going to wait 4 weeks for that letter, or 4 months for that letter to
Yes.
arrive. Now we've got a text message, an email arriving within seconds, and the
Instant.
response expected perhaps same day, perhaps within an hour. And that's going to drive a sense of urgency that we have never seen before.
Mm.
We are also changing societally at a rate that we haven't before. So,
Mm.
just to look at the broader context here, like look at how much the world has changed even in the last 15 years with the advent of smartphones.
Yeah,
And how
absolutely.
we know that's changing posture, it's changing our neck shape. It's like
Yeah.
having a huge impact, and things have never changed that fast before.
Yeah.
And now we've got AI and all of that, and that's changing things again really quickly. And so we are on this exponential sort of treadmill that's speeding up, speeding up. We've got relationships are more complicated than they've ever been before. No longer is it just, okay, you stay at home and I go to work. And now it's, well, I'll go to work and you'll go to work and we'll sort of manage this. And every part of the partnership has to be negotiated now.
Yeah.
It's so much more complex, and we have to have communication skills that
Mm.
many of us don't naturally have,
Yep.
that we used to get away with not having. So we have to be able to talk about these things. I mean, that's going to create more, potentially more conflict, more complication. We've got financial pressures and things. I mean, that's always sort of been there, but
You're right though, like it is like I think that like the speed of things, because when I think anxiety, also as someone who has had horrendous anxiety and is probably like still something that I'm going through, like there's a feeling of speed and jitteriness, is that a word? Like it just feels very fast. And to
mm,
have like the speed of the world getting quicker as well, like I can see how like just there's an energy that's kind of like and we're energetic people. Like people are energetic. Like we pick up on things, like the speed of things, the anxiety, your nervous system is just like on and on and on and on and on. Like
yeah.
I feel that's why I asked the question, like, are we getting more anxious? Because it just feels like we are as a society.
Yeah. And I mean, I haven't even touched on really like the impact of social media too, and the highlight reel. So we're comparing. But even, times where I've really let myself, drop into this like Byron Bay way of life, because I'm in Byron, or when I was in Bali, and I really just let myself go slow and
Mm.
choose to create my own world that's slow. There is a sense that almost FOMO, that you
Yeah.
are missing out on something and being a part of this like buzz of constant doing energy. And so, yeah, it's a tough one, to
Mm.
navigate. And even if we zoom in on the context of, say, just women in our society now, we are trying to fit into a man's world still,
Yeah.
trying to work hours and with pressures and stresses that male physiology typically deals with better.
Yeah.
They're not getting, irregular periods and period pain and things like that from lack of rest and intensity of stress. Like we are so susceptible. There's a reason why women are the ones with majority of autoimmune diseases. And, we could go on and on and on about
Yeah.
that. But yes, I would say anxiety is increasing now.
You heard it here.
So true.
Yes. And so you've kind of touched on a few things I wanted to go into, but what is happening in our body when we get anxious? Like, what is the physiological processes or hormones or, like what is happening for people? Because again, I think people, especially, I mean, I know that my niche is gut, but just for anyone that's feeling anxious, like what is happening to us when we get anxious?
Yeah, and it's actually quite beautiful because there's such an interconnection with the gut in this explanation, which is, our nervous system tends to have two primary modes, and people like to get really complex in the language around this. I just kind of like to simplify it. We've got rest and digest mode, and we've got our fight or flight mode or freeze, and fawn are the other states of our nervous system that we can go into, and that rest and digest is where we'd like to be a bit more of the time that most of us aren't sort of dropping into. And this is where it's called our parasympathetic nervous system. It's where we're more calm, we feel more relaxed. And generally the blood flow is hanging out more in our digestive system, our vital organs. It's hanging around our abdomen because,
Mhm.
hey, like there's no immediate threat. We can just take care of the body. We can take care of our fertility as well. We can balance our hormones and regulate everything there. But if we are being triggered by a stress response, we go into our fight or flight mode or our sympathetic nervous system. And this is where the blood flow moves predominantly to our limbs, or our heart rate will increase, our breathing is more rapid, our pupils dilate as well to like take in any potential threat. And we are now responding, as we've talked about some of those stresses, to all these everyday moments as though we're being chased, as though there is
Yes.
something's coming to get you if you don't do the thing and show up and keep going, going, going. And so we are stuck, a lot of us, in this fight or flight response. And that's really what's happening with chronic anxiety. We're not able to drop into our parasympathetic
Mm.
nervous system readily. We're becoming more and more, heightened and hypervigilant. And in terms of the chemical response in the body, we're getting usually a burst of cortisol, which is one of our key stress hormones. Adrenaline can be there too. And all of this is contributing to, well, think about if your blood flow is not hanging out around your vital organs because we're in emergency mode, well, we don't have time to take care of our reproductive health because, like, no, it's not important to make a baby right now. Like,
For
we've got to
sure.
survive.
Yeah.
And also digestion, yeah, goes out the window. So we'll often notice things like, as you well know, Rachel, like maybe think food will just go right through us. Maybe we'll get constipated. There's just this sort of dysfunction happening with our digestion. It can't all occur in the way that we would like. And so,
Mm.
yeah, those are predominantly some of the things that are going on when we are triggered into that state.
And I think like, again, the parasympathetic state is known as rest and digest.
Mm.
Like it is there in the name. That like we need to be in this state to be digesting food, better, well. Like you said, who like making a baby, like no one's wanting to digest their lunch if they think they're being chased by a lion, which is like, primitively what our nervous system would have been primed for and still is, although it's not lions, it's other things. So anxiety can be really hard. So there's, I guess, the context of this question is there are people that have, like many of my audience, they get anxious around food. They're like, food is my trigger. And so it's really hard for them to at that time fall into that rest and digest space when the trigger is right there. So there's, I guess, a really, for some people that might be easy to identify, but there's also this feeling that it is constantly happening. Like we're getting, as you said, anxious from running late, social media, like all of these different things in our life. And I guess our baseline for anxiety for many people is kind of raised. Like their baseline of being calm is probably still quite anxious. If people are finding it really hard to recognize that they're anxious, like what are some signs that are a bit of a giveaway that maybe your nervous system isn't as calm as it should be, that isn't predominantly working out of a parasympathetic state?
Mm. Oh, you're asking such great questions. So it's interesting because we often are not very aware of our body
Mm.
when we are in an anxious state. We might notice that we generally feel a bit buzzed, maybe our tummy's churning, but it can be subtle too. And one of the ways that we can know is that our thoughts are typically running pretty fast, and there's a lot of information going around in that mind, and we're ruminating.
Mm,
Perhaps we're thinking about, oh gosh, what am I going to eat later? And is this going to be okay? And how's my tummy going to feel? And is it going to be all right? And I'm like, oh, is that a symptom? Oh no, it's all right. It's not. And did I remember to take my supplements? And right. And there's this urgency in the mind, which is telling us you are way up in your head, you are in your thoughts, in your mind, you are disconnected from your body.
mm,
And we'll often do this sort of disconnect, especially when we've had a good reason to want to get out of our body. Like maybe your digestive symptoms or whatever symptoms are coming up for you with your health are really uncomfortable.
yeah.
And so we want to escape that. We want to get out of it. But the key to move back to a sense of trust and working with this is not just it is a lot to do with having knowledge and power and testing and
Mm,
a really great supplement plan and having awareness around what foods are more likely and not likely to create an issue for you. But ultimately, we've got to learn to trust ourselves again, trust our body, and trust that no matter what, even if there is a uncomfortable symptom arising, that
mm,
you've been through that and you will get through it again. And
yeah.
you can then use that information to make choices. What tends to happen, Rachel, and I'm taking us in a bit more of a different direction here, is that
We'll go with it.
when we're in that helplessness, when we're like, oh my God, I don't know what to eat, and I'm feeling really anxious,
Mm,
we're being triggered momentarily. We're having an emotional flashback to when we were a child at some point, and we
mm,
have a sense of control.
mm,
We felt similar. So usually there's that we were set up in some way to still feel this way. And it depends and varies on individual to individual. So I'd love to, if I had a specific example, I could go into more detail with that. But we believe temporarily that we are living like a child. We're not aware that we're coming from that childlike perspective where we have no choice, no control, where the bad feeling might not get better.
mm,
Um, because when we're children, if we are feeling a lot of emotional distress, for example, and there isn't a person, an adult there to help us through that moment, we cannot regulate our own nervous system. We cannot soothe. So we need someone to come and be there with us in our pain. And if that didn't happen, then we get this sense of, oh no, this bad feeling is going to go on and on
mm,
forever. It's never going to get better. And if we can start to deal with some of that, we can resolve a lot of those moments from our past. It gets easier moment to moment to remember, hang on a moment, I am an adult. I have information.
yep.
This feeling in my body, I can work with it. Or, okay, so I ate some cheese and oh gosh, like that's not feeling so good in my body.
Yep.
It's painful, it's uncomfortable, but I can get through this. And tomorrow's a new day and I can eat differently tomorrow and make
Yeah.
different
I
choices.
think you've touched on something like really, really important, which I was going to get to, which is exactly, I guess, why we go on these tangents, because everything comes back around to where we need it to go anyway. So you've spoken about, I guess, inner child or your littler self. And my question is, because and it might be that I'm saying that the answer is no to this, but like, is that the root cause of anxiety? Like, is this, or is that one of the root causes is like stuff that has happened to us? And I ask that in a way because, again, we talk about the perfect supplements, the perfect diet. You may even be meditating every day. You may be going for your daily walk and you still feel anxious. Like, is this like the root cause, or are there other root causes? Or I guess root cause, I'm using that term because it's often used in gut health and it may not be used in, in the work that you do specifically, but are these the deeper things that are at play that we need to address that will really unlock the calmness that we're all after?
Yes, and I love the term root cause as well. And when we really want to get to like what has primed us for these experiences that feel so fearful and overwhelming now as adults, it always comes back to our childhood. It's so cliche, isn't it? But it's
Mm,
also fascinating and very empowering process to go through to see that, wow, I thought this anxiety I was feeling is just about me, feeling unsafe driving a car right now or feeling anxious about giving a speaking presentation. But when we go back to where that originated, because a lot of people can give speaking presentations, feel nervous in the lead up, but also like not overly consumed by it. Whereas there are some of us who will, oh my God, I have to give a speaking presentation. I am dreading this. This is going to be horrible. I feel like I'm going to die. And if we
Yes.
go back to when that originated, well, we were often going to see perhaps a child who was frequently yelled at, dismissed, and shut down if they ever spoke up.
Mm.
Don't speak back to me. You don't have a voice. I'm the parent here. And that child learns, oh my goodness, if I speak up, I'm going to be judged, I'm going to be shut down, and I'm going to have this sense of connection and safety with my parent threatened. And that means my survival is threatened. When we're children, we have to have a secure relationship with our parents. If we don't, we're going to be activated in this sense that we might die. We might not have our emotional needs met, primarily as one of the things we need for survival, but also our physical needs. Maybe they'll kick me out. Maybe I won't have food. Maybe so that sense of connection and belonging and feeling like you're on good terms with your caregivers, that drives everything. That
Yeah.
is like, so fundamental. And so that's why so much of our anxiety now is driven by what happens when we're younger. And so it will shape how we show up to scenarios, and it shapes how resilient we are within ourselves, how capable we feel. Everything that we think is just our personality and our identity.
Yeah.
Pretty much we learned that somewhere along the way
Yeah.
because we were told it, or we took on that perception of ourselves.
And I think that's really important to know. And also just what you spoke about, because people might be listening to this again if they've got gut issues, they're thinking, but I didn't have gut issues, or I didn't have like an issue with gut issues, or I wasn't anxious about food. And I guess what you're saying is that I guess it doesn't have to be the exact same experience necessarily when it's younger. It can be themes that happen that then I guess present or find different triggers later in life. So it doesn't like don't think that just because you've developed IBS later in life and now you're anxious around food that inner child work still may not be part of your picture because it by the sounds of it, it likely is. It just doesn't look like IBS gut issues from when you were younger. Is that kind of what you want people to kind of understand as well? Is that true in what I kind of paraphrased?
100%. And
Yeah.
I've worked with a number of clients with this, persistent gut issues that are connected with anxiety, and they've,
Yeah.
done a lot of things, and it just seems to be not resolving. And when we go back, sometimes there are literal examples. Like
Mm.
one client who felt so rushed on the toilet in the morning before school when she was in primary school, because it was, we have to get the bus, we have to get the bus.
Yes.
And she never gave herself the time to fully empty her bowels and have a bowel motion. And so now she still does that as an adult. She rushes herself, and that's created a lot of issues in
Yeah.
many different ways. So the sitting on the toilet process hasn't been this calming sanctuary that it can be for so
It
many of us.
should be the calming sanctuary.
Yes, it was like, this is stressful
Yeah.
and I've got to get this out. But also, there were some moments where she'd been humiliated and felt embarrassed. And we've all
Mm.
had humiliating moments in our lives somewhere along the way, especially when we were kids. Something happened. Maybe,
Yeah.
you had to wear the old shoes to school and all the kids made fun of you, or something happened. And that can also be part of this sense of not quite trusting ourselves,
Yeah.
not trusting that we are safe. And that can manifest in, I'm not safe in my body, or I don't trust my body. And sort of like it metastasizes from there. So there are these like roots beneath
Mm.
the gut issues that can sometimes be completely unrelated to specifically the gut. It's like fear of flying has nothing to do with planes. It's
Mm.
always, it usually comes back to the fear of losing control.
Yes.
And so we'll like be thinking, I'm not flying this plane. I don't feel safe here. And we're not consciously aware of that. It's all happening on the subconscious level. But yeah, that's why like statistics about, well, planes are really safe, and, meet the pilot and everything's, that doesn't really work because it's not actually about the plane.
And this is where I wanted the next conversation to go. So we're doing things again. The example is diet, talk therapy, which, is love and it's got its place. Supplements, different things, they're happening on a very conscious and deliberate level. But what we're talking about is the subconscious level. Um, what are the modalities that can help us address our subconscious mind?
Mm. Yeah, usually we're talking about some form of hypnotherapy, and that's been rebranded many times over the last century, I would say. It used to be the primary form of psychotherapy was hypnotherapy,
Mm.
and it's just evolved in over time. But for example, NLP is one form of hypnotherapy that works with the subconscious mind, but there's a rebrand on that because NLP sounds neuro-linguistic programming. It sounds much
Yeah.
more advanced and different,
Yes.
doesn't it?
Yeah.
The form of hypnotherapy I practice is RTT, another acronym, but it stands for Rapid Transformational Therapy, and it's using a lot of the techniques of hypnotherapy, techniques from CBT and NLP, all wrapped up into one to create a really quick response for people.
Mm.
The techniques that just click, and then all of a sudden we can't go back to seeing something the old way that we used to see it. We can really break a lot of those old beliefs and program in new ones.
Yeah, so we have to address the subconscious at a level that works with the subconscious. And I think that's where people think that I can supplement my way out of this. And that ain't gonna happen. I've probably tried it. You probably have yourself. We're telling you it doesn't work.
Oh
We
yeah.
need to, we need to be using the subconscious stuff.
I mean, like things like passion flower, skullcap, kava, herbs, they work great.
Yeah,
And they have their place, especially if
totally.
we're really exhausted and we just need to take care of ourselves.
Mm,
But that's not a long-term solution. We can't be having that every single day. We need to look deeper and really take the invitation that anxiety is to look deep.
mm,
Because that's all it's asking you to do. It's just asking you to love parts of yourself that you've decided are unlovable.
yeah. Oh, I love that. And those herbs, like we said, time and place. But I think as well, if you're there saying, I'm taking these and yeah, I feel like I can't get on top of my anxiety or I feel quite reliant on these things, that is probably also a very good, if not the thing that you need to be listening to that says, please dig a bit deeper, and you'll find the answer there and use those things as needed. But if we're wanting to really get to the root cause of it, got to dig deep.
Yeah.
What about I guess your opinion, and obviously like when we talk in this podcast, this is all it's never a prescriptive podcast. It's all about just having conversations, but is there a place for medications when it comes to managing anxiety, at all? Do people like what are your thoughts, I guess, on the place of medications?
Certainly sometimes. And I'm never going to say to someone, you can't take that medication or, we've got to
Yep.
get you off it. And that's some like really important goal. A lot of clients come to me because they want to get off their medication or they want to try something else before
Mm,
like leaving medication or almost like a last
yep.
resort. Or perhaps they've tried it and had some unpleasant effects as well. But it certainly has a place in helping us to cope at times.
Yep.
However, is it essential for most people? I would say possibly not.
Yeah,
And again, that's going to be case by case and
for
depend
sure.
on people. And always talk to your doctor about all of these things.
Absolutely.
But if someone is struggling and they say to me, like, do I have to take medication? I know there are so many different ways that we can approach it that are just as effective
Mm,
and can, not have necessarily those side effects and things like that. So yeah, it really depends. It's not like
yeah.
it's a gray area for me. It's like, yeah,
Yeah.
we can work with that. The one thing that I will say about medication is that and this is why we're all so different, and it depends what
Yes.
sort of journey we want to take in our lives. Do we want to embrace our self-growth or do we want to kind of just like get through? And for some people, the priority is just going to be getting through. Maybe you're a
Yeah.
single mom with 3 kids and it's like, I've just got to get through.
Yeah.
But if we do want to embrace that self-growth, we do need to really feel, and we need to go
Mm,
into our emotional world too, which is part of this subconscious space that I've been sort of tapping on here. But a place we often don't really want to go, and we spend our whole lives trying not to go to.
mm.
And a lot of these medications can just get in the way a bit from us to be able to deeply.
Yeah, a bit numbing, as some people can describe, that they feel a bit numb, which you can see why that would be beneficial to some degree, but in the work of going deeper, how that may be how that may inhibit. And I think, your answer was, I guess, very similar to mine, where there's absolutely a time and place for things, like there is no judgment and you can be on medication and be looking at hypnotherapy and looking at how your diet impacts it and, doing meditation at the same time. Like it doesn't have to be an either or. And I think that's kind of where like we need to be a bit more integrative in how we're thinking because people need the different things at different times. So integrating these things can absolutely coexist.
Absolutely, it can.
So moving on to, I guess, are there things that we could be eating or drinking or consuming right now that is maybe adding to our anxiety load that we don't realize that we could maybe stop doing?
I'm gonna guess you have similar thoughts and feelings around coffee that I do, but caffeine is just one of those things that it can be quite an irritant to our gut on one hand. Also, it is just adding a load of fuel to our anxiety, and it does have a cortisol response. So we do get an increase in cortisol when we have even just one coffee, like your
Yeah.
one coffee a day. So I would say if you're really struggling with anxiety, that's one thing we do have to look at. And it doesn't mean you can never drink a coffee and I'm talking about all sources of caffeine. So black tea is in there too, chai is in there too. It's
Yeah.
not caffeine free unless it's specifically a
A
special,
caffeine free. Yeah.
yeah, like a rooibos or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to assess whether that's impacting. So I often recommend just like 2 weeks off caffeine altogether, like all sources. People say, can I do decaf? And even decaf has quite a significant chunk of caffeine in it.
Mm,
Plus a whole lot of chemicals and things that, better off not being in our system. So if we then can see, okay, what's my baseline and how do I feel? You can bring it back in, but most of the people I work with don't really want to bring it back in, or they have it like once a week after that and more on like a relaxed day as opposed to a
yes.
day because their body can just tolerate it better. Personally, I am biased with this. I'm not a coffee drinker. I never have been. And it's because my nervous system can't handle it. Like if I have one coffee, Rachel, I will be like, my chest will tighten, my brain feels weird. Like it's just it doesn't agree with me. And that's definitely like that does vary person to person. Not everyone's going to feel that response,
Yeah.
but we just don't know unless we start to see, especially if we've just been having coffee every day for the last 10 years.
Yeah, your baseline is kind of skewed. A couple of years ago, was, drinking coffee. I will be the balanced person and balance out that I am a coffee drinker. But I realized without realizing, and it only was when I stopped, that this caffeine that I was having was doing horrendous things to my nervous system. And it was when I was taking patients and I was like just getting the like everything. Like I was getting the heart racing, the sweats. And I just thought I was anxious about seeing this patient who I might have been having a difficult conversation with. But taking out the caffeine, and I still do have decaf because I am a coffee lover, and I do the best I can, the fair trade, organic, those types of things, but not perfect. But I still do feel a really big difference. Even that for me, I was like, that does make a difference. And I've been decaf, or essentially that caffeine free coffee since then because I realized, and I didn't realize until I stopped. And I think that's what you're saying is like sometimes you don't realize until you stop that like it does make a difference.
Yeah.
What about alcohol? Because people are like, oh, it's making me relax. But like, yeah, like what happens actually when we're having alcohol?
Well, before I answer that, I just want to say, like, you represent such a beautiful example of having that aware like relationship with your body.
Mm,
There's an awareness. You're not just having the coffee and then like, why am I so anxious? You probably know if you're going to drink 2 coffees in a day, the result of that is going to be heightened anxiety and perhaps a bit of a more restless sleep.
yeah,
And you know that about yourself. So then we can make a judicious choice with it. And that being said, I also still have things like cacao and I have chai every now and then.
yeah,
Caffeine's still there. It's just minimal because that's my level of tolerance,
yeah.
which we have to learn. But with alcohol, it's actually similar. So we can start to, when we have a break from it, if we are drinking, every single week and it's sort of just in there all the time, and you're used to just every Sunday morning waking up with a bit of a achy head, then it's only when we remove it for a while that we start to realize how much it's impacting us
Mm,
and how we feel. So yes, it will temporarily make us feel relaxed. What it does is it binds to our GABA receptors in our brain, which are our calming neurotransmitter, and it blunts this anxiety response in our body. It makes us think temporarily that we're relaxed and everything's fine, but the next day, as we metabolize that alcohol, it's like a rubber band flicking back, and then we get
Mm,
increase in anxiety the next day. And I noticed this myself, even with like 2 glasses of wine or something, the next day I feel a little bit more edgy.
yeah.
And so it doesn't mean, again, that you can never drink alcohol. You can totally have a drink here or there or whatever works for you, and enjoy a big celebration, once every now and then. But that's up to you to decide that you know what the payoff is going to be, or
Yeah.
the cost, should
Yes.
I say, is going to be. And you can then make that decision. And then the next day, when you do feel more anxiety, you know why, and you know that it's going to pass. And that makes it a lot easier to accept that,
Mm.
okay, yeah, I'm feeling a bit more edgy today, a bit more nervous, but that's all right. Like, I know exactly why.
Yeah.
I'm going to take care of myself, going to have a nice big bubble bath and drink lots of water, and replenish my magnesium and B vitamins.
That and I think that is so true because like I mean I've got the examples of like having the like worst Sunday scaries, post drinking, and it's true. Like you feel at the time you're like, I'm feeling so relaxed the night before, and then the next day you're like, yeah, my Sunday scaries are 1,000 out of 10. Like, like it feels worse. And but the awareness and you bring it back to being aware. Like it's all about awareness. It's about I know alcohol does this. I know I had a glass. I know I had 2 glasses or whatever it is. And that is why I feel this way today. And it's about awareness and not feeling like you're going crazy. It's about really understanding the relationship. And yeah, I think it would be an interesting experiment people could go through. And this is obviously what you do is get people to cut out those and just see how they feel. Like, people can do this on their own. Give yourself 2 weeks. How do you go without anxiety, alcohol, and just kind of be aware as to how you're feeling?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
right. And that's how we find out.
Okay, so what are some simple things that people could start doing now that would be beneficial for their nervous system? Obviously, just spoke about caffeine and alcohol, perhaps giving them a little bit of a break, a bit of a trial, but like, what are some things that could be quick, free, easy? Like, yeah, what are some now things?
Apart from my clients who are messaging me all the time about these sort of things, and I recently had 2 close people in my life just in the last week reach out to me saying, I'm feeling really anxious. It's building up. Like, what do I do? And these are people who generally don't want to hear advice from me because they know me. And it's like, you don't really want to go in there.
Yeah.
But I have to say, the most honest thing that comes straight to my mind is have a cry. You need
Yeah.
to feel you need to feel your emotions. There's some reason that this anxiety is here, and especially when there's been a buildup of life stress and
Mm.
everything's feeling a bit overwhelming. Just let yourself feel overwhelmed for a bit, and let yourself crumble. It's not forever. It's just admitting to yourself in that moment, right now, this is the truth of how I'm feeling. I actually do feel incapable. I do feel really flat. I do feel really, lost or whatever it is. And if you spend even 5 minutes just attending to that part of you, not glossing over and pretending everything's fine, it's fine, I'll just push through, that can do so much so quickly.
Mm.
And I mean, like that's a silver bullet to
Yeah.
anxiety. And it will lower your heart rate. It'll bring you a sense of spaciousness and relief right away.
Yeah, there's that permission to feel like what we're talking about. It's feeling our feelings and knowing that it's going to be okay. It's temporary. I love that. And I guess
Yeah.
my final question, and this may be the same answer, it may be a different answer, but if someone has a gut feeling that they're anxious, again, they may not be aware or they know that they have anxiety and it is impacting their gut health, like what would be your number one piece of advice to them?
Listen to the message
Mm,
and just get curious about what this anxiety is trying to tell me. Like, it's not here to hurt you, it's not here to attack you. It's an invitation to get to know yourself better and ultimately become more of your authentic self, more free with your emotions, more knowledgeable about who you are. But if we want to do something really quick that's like nice for the nervous system and the gut, lie down with your legs up the wall for 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Brings the blood flow. I don't know if you tell people to do this too, Rachel, but
Not often enough, but it's a classic, isn't it?
it's a classic. It'll bring the blood flow from your limbs back towards your abdomen, mimicking that rest and digest response of the nervous system. And it does lower your heart rate. It brings you right back into that relaxed space. So it's good for your digestion and the anxiety all at once. And you can still be watching a TV show or something. You do it in front of Netflix and it doesn't matter.
That's
Just like gravity, do
that's
it.
like a triple win. It's like
Yeah.
literally everything. It's like anxiety, gut, relaxing, like it's free. Like that's a fantastic advice. And I think we've just covered so much today and the conversation was just perfect in terms of we've just covered everything that I feel like is so important. I mean, there's so much we could talk about, but like even just like the introductory levels of some concepts, I think I'm so glad that we spoke about them. And for people who want to connect with you or learn more from you, like I'll put things in the show notes, but how can people do that?
Yeah, so come check out my Instagram over at Georgie the Naturopath, which is where I hang out quite a lot. Feel free to say hi and ask a question. I'm always happy to guide you or support you. And my website's georgiecollinson.com. And I just released a new book. It's called Master Your Relationship Anxiety, because relationships are just such a place of potential anxiety and uncertainty and conflict and insecurities and doubts and all those worries. And so it's a book to guide you through all of that, a follow-up to the anxiety reset method, which is a good starting point if you're just dealing with more general anxiety.
Amazing. So I'll put all of that in the show notes, but thank you again so much for joining me. I've had an absolute blast.
Thank you.
Thanks for tuning into Gutsy Talks. I hope today's episode left you feeling inspired to take the next step in your gut health journey. If you're ready to dive deeper, head over to rachellarson.com.au. There's a range of courses and resources waiting for you. If you loved this episode, I'd be so grateful if you shared it with others who might benefit from this information. And so you don't miss out on future Gutsy Talks, be sure to hit follow and leave a review. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'm Rachel Larson, and I can't wait to connect with you again for our next Gutsy Talk.